Hey everybody, this is Christian Buckley at another MVP Buzz Chat. I'm here based out of Lehi, Utah. I'm talking with Agnes Molnar. And Agnes, hello.
Hi Christian, hello everyone. I'm really happy and a pleasure to be here today.
And so I know you're out on the road. Why don't you give everybody kind of a background, who you are, where you're from, where you are today, where you're going to be over the next, few months. But yeah, just tell us about yourself.
Okay, so I don't have my calendar open right now, so I cannot tell you the exact schedule.
We need details in this, Agnes. Come on. You need to be ready for these conversations.
But I have a web page where you can follow me. Anyway, my name is Agnes Molnar. I live in Budapest, Hungary. And I run my own company called Search Explained. And in a nutshell, this is what I do. I explain how search works in Microsoft technologies, including SharePoint and Office 365. And the reason I travel so much, actually, there are two reasons. Number one is that I have clients all over the world right now, Western Europe, in the US, and also in Singapore these days. And the other reason is I really like speaking at conferences. I do, sessions and workshops. This week I am in Chicago for the Digital Workplace Experience Conference. And in the following weeks and months, I'm going to be in Stockholm, in London, Copenhagen, Singapore, obviously several times. In the US, at least 3 more times this year. So you can find me everywhere.
Yeah, Agnes, you're one of those people, that I'll go to some random event, I'm speaking at something, or there with a meeting a client, go to an event, and it's for years, and I would see you, and I would see like Jeff Fried, talking about search at a bunch of those conferences. But you're one of those people where we don't see kind of the other MVPs, the people that we know through the Microsoft events. There'll be this other industry event that's not Microsoft specific, and that I'll be like, oh, Agnes is there, and like there's a few folks that are like that. Sue Hanley, same thing. I'll see at a couple events where I won't see anybody else that I recognize. But Jeff and I have caught up a few times at other events. But yeah, so it's what is the latest happening around search? I'm like, what are you out there talking about?
Well, it's a lot these days, and I'm very happy about that. So if you have been following the search world in Microsoft, that first of all, you know that SharePoint on-prem search has not really changed in the last 5-6 years. So I would even say it started to become boring to speak about search and to do search projects, because actually one of the primary motivations for me is to learn new things. But if the technology does not change for years, so I was very close to start something new. But these days, Office 365 is really exciting and interesting, because with all those Microsoft search, the modern search or the new search is really new. And there are a lot of improvements, and there are changes all the time. So for me, it's really exciting because it's something to learn. For my clients, it is really exciting because it's finally new. It is really innovative, and it is intelligent. At the same time, it can be confusing, yes.
Well, what you're saying, for the last few years, this dark ages in search technology we've been going through in the Microsoft world. No, I mean, obviously there's been a lot that's been going on. It's not like the team has just paused the activities. It just hasn't been at the forefront, a lot of what's been going on. Or has it? Has it been more of a dev behind the scenes? I mean, as an MVP, as a partner, I mean, you have a little more insight than the normal, person on the street into what Microsoft is doing around that. And it's not like the importance of search has diminished over the last few years and suddenly now it's highlighted again. Search is still central to a working knowledge or information management system, whether it be SharePoint or Teams or any other competitive platform. Search is critical.
It is definitely.
Yeah.
It is definitely critical. And what really happened behind the scenes is, on the front end, there were no changes, but on the back end, Microsoft worked on the graph, for example, which is a really heavy investment. They invested a lot into graph, which is needed for the new modern search, actually. So yes, it was a time when there was nothing new for search, but basically now it is definitely visible why Microsoft needed that long time for coming out with those new improvements.
I did a presentation on administration on Teams and was talking about, there's a couple questions that came up from the audience around PowerShell versus Graph API expansion, that capability. And when you go in and look at, and there's a few tables that are out there in this example is showing that the capabilities of accessing this data, while there's more dev work to be able to access the information, it's about twice as much that you can do as far as go and automate, get access to data. It's just not possible yet through PowerShell, but it's available through the graph. So more and more has been, as you know, and I think we've even talked about before, it's been just a topic of conversation. One of the limitations of graph has been get all of the workloads into the graph, push more of this data that we know is available, it's in there that we need, push that data to the substrate, get it accessible through the Graph API so that we can do more, automate more out of it. And so that's where a lot of this development has been. So it's been, when they announced and rebranded the Office 365 Graph to the Microsoft Graph, and we started to see more of what they were building behind this, and now there's huge team that they've been building steadily that are focused on this problem space. So for most clients that you go into, how are you getting them started? How do you approach this conversation? Because I'm sure you've got clients that have invested heavily in, back with the fast search for SharePoint, and they've made huge investments in this area. Kind of, how do you enter into this conversation of what's changed, what's new?
Well, I always like to do in-person workshops at the beginning, like 2 days or 3 days with my clients, which means I visit them in their office. The only thing I ask them to involve as many different roles as possible into this workshop. So for example, it's nice to have the IT there, but also business has to be involved, because usually the IT does not understand the business enough. They don't understand all the different cases or the different challenges that the business have to face with. So I really I'm not saying there have to be 20 people sitting in a room, but I really like to have 6, 8, or 10 different people with different roles sitting in a room. And then when I visit them, the goal of those workshops is, first of all, a knowledge transfer from me to them, what is possible. And I always show them examples. I always show them previous clients' user interfaces, previous client searches, what they have done, of course, without sharing any sensitive information. And the second goal is to make them talk to each other. And this is one of the most challenging part of those workshops, because in many cases, especially for large organizations, they have never met before in person. And now they are sitting in the same room. We are talking about optimizing the content lifecycle and the processes to make everything easier to find. But they have really, from my perspective, they have great debates about different challenges they have, about different priorities as well. And of course, everyone thinks that their own pain points are the most important ones and the most critical ones. So during those 2 or 3 days, this is what I do. I make them talk to each other. I educate them, and at the same time, they learn from each other as well. And of course, I learn from the organization and learn about the organization to help them further during their journey for search, because obviously search is unique for every organization. So if I talk to you, most probably you have different challenges, you have different content, you have different processes to anyone else on this globe. So it's actually, it's a lot of psychology what I do.
Mm-hmm. I just was thinking is like, this goes back. So in the early mid 90s, I was a technical project manager, and what you've just described, I mean, there's always that kickoff meeting, which is everybody as much as possible sitting around the table. Here's my role. Here's my perspective. Let's talk about the scope. Let's talk about the goals, what we're trying to achieve. And so you can have exactly those sessions. When I go in and consult with a client, whether it's a technical deployment or it's on the technical marketing side, but I refer to it as this discovery workshop or discovery session. It's exactly that. It's to develop that shared understanding of what it is that we're trying to achieve and the different perspectives there. The more and more I work within the tech sector, I've been in the space for almost 30 years, and it's as you know, we talk about this, we say this kind of the same thing out there. I know to audiences too, is that very few of the technical problems that we set in front of us are actually technical. They like the problem. It's all the people, it's the conversations, it's the understanding of, and not about the technology. Technology does things or it doesn't do things. There's switches. It's either on or off. It's features and cables that are either there or not. They're working or not. The lights are on or they're off. Everything else is conversation and people and understanding.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in many cases, people blame the technology. I mean, search doesn't work, search sucks and everything, but actually search does what you tell it to do. Yeah. And it works with the content that you feed into the search engine. So it goes back to people.
It's one of my favorite comments when somebody will be on, Facebook or something. I love the trolling message where they talk about a technical glitch or something. And I always liked responding user error is really hard. I know.
Yes.
But yeah, it's I think with search, certainly with search, having been through this a few times with organizations, with clients as well, and inside organizations, is if you're looking at search through the lens of, well, here's the features, here's what we could turn on and off, like wrong approach. You start with, here's the business, this is what we're trying to accomplish. Whether or not the technology that you're in the process of purchasing or you've already paid for and it's in place, if you don't start with here's what we actually need, this is what we're trying to do, and that'll help you determine, hey, if there are gaps, where the gaps are, and whether technology can help fill those gaps or not.
Yep. And in many cases during those workshops and also during online sessions or online meetings, I ask my clients, okay, let's have this meeting now, but number one rule, do not mention the word search. Let's talk about the business problem. You can tell me what you want to find, but don't mention search, because in many cases, we are not talking about search. We are talking about a business problem. And search as a technology can be used to solve that problem.
Yeah, it's look, there's a lot. You could go really deep on, on search, different aspects of search, because there's not, for years, I kind of got started in the SharePoint community talking about metadata, taxonomy development, and the very limited or non-existent features in SharePoint around that. That's how I started speaking, publicly in this ecosystem around that. And you can go very deep in that, the information architecture, just that end user and biz and analyst type capabilities. Then there's the technology. There's the administration of. There's all these different topics. And it seems like my experience, I'd love to hear your thoughts, that the time is spent least on that which is on the front end, the user and the IA side, versus the admin and the technology itself, the IT aspects of that. So how do you, I mean, one, do you agree with that? And two, if so, how do you redirect? How do you get them to think more about all of the work that leads up to the technology?
One, yes, I agree.
I kind of assumed so. I was just feeding that to you, but yeah.
You know, just to make sure that I answer all your
Right.
questions. So number two, I really love using whiteboards, and not only really physical whiteboards on the wall, but also the whiteboard on my laptop. So when I start a workshop, I draw what we already know. Okay, this is what you have, this is what you have, this is what you have, and this is what you have. And let's talk about the challenges, let's talk about what you want to achieve, etc., etc. And then we keep drawing that one, what I call the master whiteboard for the session or the workshop. And, you know, even when we start talking about search and search features, let's say, I don't know, we want to have those refiners for this, or we want to have an application for HR which searches in this kind of content. And we always refer and we always go back to that master whiteboard. Okay, this is where it should go to, but those are the dependencies. This is what we need. This is what we also need. And this way to talk about the dependencies, it's for me, it's always easy to start talking about not search, but the other things around and the other things that are needed for having search. And of course, search is always in the middle. And this is the number one thing that we want to achieve, a good findability of content. But this way we can talk about everything else, and we can physically and literally draw the relationships between everything on this master whiteboard. So by the end of those 2 or 3 days, this whiteboard, you can imagine, can be really huge and really complex. But this is also a good way to show every organization how unique their problem is or problems are, and also how unique the approach that they have to follow.
Well, and the other side of that too is that when you creating that shared understanding, when you visually map it out like that, where then you can start to convey that, well, this decision, here's how it might work great for you. Here's how that decision impacts all these other organizations, because that's what people are typically blind to. They say, well, I need this, and this is how I need it, and I'm good. That's also a problem with kind of a meta issue here, but around, going in there and saying, and here is the one platform, the one way, the one solution. All of you must, all these organizations, all of your unique needs, but must all be on SharePoint this way, use it this way, when the reality is that one way is not going to meet the majority of the individual business unit needs or organizational teams, project teams, whatever those things are, which is a huge driver of shadow IT efforts, people subverting IT process and going around and doing other things, which from a knowledge or information management perspective means that you then have intellectual property, content, assets distributed across a lot of locations. You have no idea where it is, what it is, who has it. You can't manage everything, and you certainly can't search for it and find it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's the same shadow IT problem, and I can see it many cases. So with the best intent, for example, and just seeing all those dependencies, in many cases, what I can see is just very simple, or it seems to be a simple thing. Let's disable external sharing in SharePoint and OneDrive, which might make sense from security and sensitivity and privacy perspective. But on the other hand, in every organization where I can see it, the users start using Dropbox, they start using Google Docs, so some other platform, and they copy content back and forth, which means it gets even more complex, and it really becomes a nightmare from content management perspective, from findability perspective, from IT security
compliance and security, right? I mean, all that. But it's, I mean, the other thing, I actually wrote an article on this last year, is that it breaks a bunch of other, like that specific thing. So turning off sharing in OneDrive, which is SharePoint, you know, breaks other features. You know, the people need to be aware of that across multiple workloads.
Yes, this is why it is important to map all those things. So if I change something here, that means 100 other places where it has an impact, this one way or other. So it's always, yeah, it's always a nice challenge.
So what is, I mean, kind of what's the future of this? So where are things going? What are you excited about and seeing in the world of search technology?
Well, what I'm really excited about, and I have this on my personal learning plan, so to speak, is how machine learning and artificial intelligence can help search better. Obviously, I'm not saying it will be intelligent enough ever on the level of, you know, no human.
Yeah, we'll just become the batteries to power the robots. No, I don't buy into that.
So I don't think it will ever be there, but I really would like to understand, and I really would like to learn what is possible, how we can support search. So I don't know, and definitely this is coming. The question is just how much and what will be possible and when.
You know, there's a lot of online programs, a lot of universities, so in person as well, but that are really building up content around AI and around you know, information management. There's free things that are out there online. There's paid. I think that I mean, Microsoft is an example, because this obviously is a much broader than just Microsoft technology issue. But they've been building out assets that are available. I believe it's all through the LinkedIn Learning program, because they want people to go and be educated and be aware of what, you know, capabilities are out there, what AI, ML capabilities are possible, and get people to. I mean, it's not like I don't think that there's formal certifications. There probably are. I'm just not aware of them. But just that there's a lot out there that somebody who just wants to go be read up on and understand the basics of what's happening and being able to more closely kind of monitor what's changing in technology, there's just more and more content resources available for that kind of thing.
Yes, I think the biggest challenge for me is finding the time when to do this rather than finding the resources. But yes, I agree. There are more and more resources, and they look good. They look absolutely good.
I know as we're wrapping up here, that was a slide on the fact that we're at time. I know that. That's what you're doing here, Agnes. I get it. Okay, let's wrap up.
No, I wanted to tell you, but
but it's the same thing. It's like I used to read so much, and I don't have time to read as much. You know, just books that I like now. I spend most of my time reading and articles and things that I just need to do with current clients and just to keep up with different things. But, you know, I was actually talking to my son about how it's like, I don't know the last time where I just had like a book and went out outside and sat under a tree with the nice summer in the shade, but with the breeze blowing and read. I used to love doing that, going outside and finding a nice quiet place to read. I haven't done that in years.
I still do that. I'm not saying every day, but I try to read a real book. Okay, it's Kindle now, but still a book, not technical, not business, just for fun. And, you know, I live in a family house where we have a nice backyard. So when I'm home, I really like to sit outside with my book, with a cup of coffee and just read. And also I try to do that when I travel, to find a place to sit outside if the weather is nice. So
I do that now more and more with travel as well. I always have a book with me when I travel, and I don't always get to it, but whether it's on the plane or sitting in between, and I'll try to go through that because it gives you, and I'm a science fiction reader. So I prefer to take a business, a leadership development, or a sci-fi book to give myself a mental break from the technology stuff that I'm working on.
Yes, and also the interesting thing, and this discussion could go much further than that, but I always read before I go to bed every day. And I found, with all those gadgets we have that helps you to identify the sleep phases and the quality of your sleep. So I find if I read something related to my job, like I try learning something or something, I don't sleep as good as when I read something that just turns off my brain and I read just for fun. So if I make my brain thinking about something, that makes my sleep worse, versus if I have some fun before bedtime, I sleep much better. So there are
let me ask, Agnes, is Fabio on the cover of any of those nighttime reading books?
No.
All right, good. All right. But I completely agree. It's and that's also a great kind of trick to when you're stuck in a problem, work-related problem, is to stop thinking about it, stop being wrapped up in that, and go and do a separate activity. And that's where reading something, different, again, leadership dev, or for me, or science fiction, I'm suddenly I'll get in even a few pages and be like, oh, you know what? I just thought of something that would help solve that other problem.
Yes.
And so it might take me 30 minutes, it might be 10 minutes, but that generally happens. I was just going to share just really quick, though, something I do, like in the morning. That's a great point about not jumping right into work. You're talking about at night and sleeping better. In the morning to wake up, part of my my regimen is, eating breakfast, is trying to, whether I'm hungry or not, eat something, even something small, I do logic problems. I do like a Sudoku or something like that. So, and it's amazing how I could be groggy thinking about that. But as I kind of track that, and I'm trying to, do the hardest setting on the app on the phone and do that. But even just playing for a few minutes, one game sharpens me, wakes me up fully, and then go and get started with things. But I try to do that same thing, of not jump right into work straight, first thing in the morning, but do something else to wake up the mind.
Yep, absolutely. For me, those are my children, but they are still young, so they need me in the mornings. But I agree. That's absolutely good.
Well, I really appreciate your time today. If people want to get in touch with you, learn more about you, what's the best way for people to find out about you or reach you?
Basically, my website is searchexplain.com. You can find my blog there. You can find the event calendar of me, where I can be found and when.
More detail than you were prepared to talk about, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, so it's searchexplain.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Molnar Agnes or at searchexplain. And you can find me. I'm not saying everywhere, but at many places.
Well, excellent. Well, enjoy the rest of your time there in Chicago. When are you home?
I'm flying home Wednesday night, so it's a quick trip now.
A couple more days. All right. Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for your time. It was great talking to you as always.
Thank you, Christian. My pleasure. Thank you.